Last week I talked all about Woodstock, and I sent you to WPXN Philadelphia that was doing a streaming audio of the concert, synced to the minute. How many of you, I wonder, did that? Sat through all 3.5 days of it. I bet someone did. Possibly our venerable music director. But it was a metaphor, 3 days of peace in music. It was a time when an agreement was made, you know, that we'd all get along, we'd all work together, we'd all feed each other, and I used it as a metaphor for what was, at that point, coming up, and that occurred yesterday. So again, huge thanks to all of you who participated in this event. If you are late arriving this morning, 110 families, 416 individuals were fed yesterday. Not just fed a meal, fed for probably a week worth of stuff that we gave them, handed out. Just absolutely remarkable. So, we return today to the theme for the month, which is the inner healing experience. The what? The thing you just did. The thing you just did where you had your hand on your chest and you said certain things. And I shared with you a couple of weeks ago when we began this that this was the creation of a fellow named Jack Boland, who was a Unity minister in Detroit, and he came up with something called the mastermind process. It was for his own people in his own center originally. People were saying, you know, how do I use this to really achieve my goals? This is what all of us who teach this stuff are trying to do. So we're trying to come up with a hack, you know? We're trying to come up with some kind of a thing. If you do this, man, and each of us has a different emphasis and all. And so he said, well, you know, maybe what you need to do is get together with some like-minded individuals and hold each other accountable. Set a goal. This was an early form of spiritual coaching, right? Life coaching. You get together with a group of people and say, well, last week you told us you were going to write a book. How's that coming? Well, you know, well, what's between you and making the kind of time commitment that's necessary to do it? And that's what a mastermind did. And I noticed that someone is in the room this morning who was a part of our study group when we first began what grew into Creative Life, and he knows who he is, and so he will well recall and back up my own memory of this, of how the first resource really that we had in that group was a small bookshelf filled with Jack Boland cassette albums that got checked out and left in the sun and came unspooled and just generally walked off, and we were constantly replacing these things, but it was the first body of work that we really had. And Jack's mastermind process we then incorporated into our Sunday services and tweaked it a little bit because we found it alarmed newcomers to hear about a mastermind. People tend to want to put that on a personality or something. The Wizard of Oz back here behind the symbol, but so we turned it into the higher power. See, Jack was not only a teacher of ministry, but he was a voice for 12-step recovery. And he was famous for this. He would, in his lectures, public lectures, he'd ask everybody who was in recovery to stand up. And this was mortifying in those days because everybody was a very private thing, you know. And he's like, no, so you should be proud. And it's something people in recovery talk about. They'll say, well, we got drunk publicly.
Yeah.
Well,
Nobody noticed that.
You know, now we're doing the right thing. Why not be public about that? When we were a mess, we were all over the map, you know. So it made a lot of sense, really. So, having had this now for well nigh on to 30 years in our Sunday talks, every now and then, about every 5 years, I like for us to go through it and revisit it and kind of be aware of what it means, because it can, otherwise we just drone on with it, you know, on a bunch of stuff. You know, it's got a meaning. So today we come to the middle part of it, which has to do with forgiveness, letting go, and an infusion of divine light in your mind. The short version of forgiveness. Now I realize forgiveness is an industry.
Yeah.
There are workshops, there are books, there are a million different
Oh,
things
yeah.
you can do. But forgiveness really, to me, boils down to changing your thought, changing your focus, replacing it with something else. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there is a great teacher of forgiveness work who recently left the planet by the name of Colin Tipping. You may be aware of his work. He wrote a book called Radical Forgiveness. He did workshops on it, did one for us here back in the day. His idea was whatever happened, you can let it go. You may not want to let it go, but that's a separate question.
Yeah.
But you can let it go. You are enabled, you are capable of letting it go. Why would you let it go? To replace it with something else, to replace that darkness in your life with light. Because forgiveness in no way lets off the hook anybody else. If anybody has harmed you in some way, they are responsible for that. They're not responsible to you directly, they're responsible to the process of the cosmos. They're responsible to their karma. In a social way, they're responsible to you. If they want to repair the relationship, then they come and make amends and do things differently. But that may or may not happen. But everybody is held to account. See, religion often teaches this, Western religion, in a personal kind of way, that God judges you. And you want God to think well of you, so you need to do the right thing. That's kind of a parental model. It's pleasing dad, you know? It's actually a lot deeper than that and how it really works. There's a law. There's not a whimsical personality back of it. There is a by God law that is unwavering in its execution of divine justice. And often we tremble at the thought of divine justice, but actually divine justice is a pretty cool thing. It just means what you think about, you bring about. It just means that in the long run, everybody gets back who they are. That's why we do this work. And there's a paradox. I got into this at 9:30 live. There's a paradox involved. That we are already perfect because we are expressions of spirit created in its image and likeness. That's true on the one hand. On the other hand, there's our estimation of ourselves. And that's the filter through which we get to experience life. So I am all that in a bag of chips, but I may not know it. You know, I may condemn myself, I may condemn others, and in so doing condemn myself. Lisa put something on the center Facebook page this week. Ramana Maharshi, I think it was quoted as saying, how do I forgive others? And the answer is there are no others. There are no others. That's a koan, that's a Zen, sort of a sound of one hand clapping kind of thing. There are no others, really? Well, there aren't any others in consciousness. Just like I said in the meditation, there's only now, and there's only here. Well, that implies there's only you. There's one. So there's one life. There's one life. You see, all of the people that you know live in your head. And your heart. But the head and heart are not go to two places. They're just two ways of seeing the same place, you know? All the people you know, right? How do you know anything? By your experience of it. How do you know anybody? By your experience of them. I don't really know who you are. All I know is what I get from you. Right? Incoming information. If the incoming information is inconsistent, then I mark you down as inconsistent. If I can't trust it, then I mark you down as untrustworthy. If you tell me one thing and go do another, you know, pretty soon the marks pile up. And I've got a whole big judgment going on you. And none of that is really who you are. All of that is my take on who you are. All of that is my personal scorepad. That's where it all lives. Most of the people who've ever hurt us in life have been people, well, Emma Hopkins would say all of the people, but let's, for the moment, just say most. If we're not willing to go there. They're people who were trying to get what they thought they needed to have by means of us. And we kind of got in the way. we kind of got in the way. Did I tell this story last week? Ron DeLorme, you know Ron? When he used to do our Wednesday night, he was our Wednesday night MC. He told a story one night. He came in, he was limping. He came in and he said, I was bitten by a snake. I was bitten, you remember this? I was bitten by a snake on this land that he has. And he said, and I realized it wasn't the snake's fault. He says, I was walking along that way and the snake was coming this way. And I put my foot down and the snake ran into it. And it bit me. Because it ran into me. And it was mad and I was in the way. And he said, I think about this is the sort of how life is. There's something's coming this way and I'm going that way, and sometimes we collide, you know? And there's all of this outrage and there's all of this, everybody gets all bowed up about it, but it's really just, oops, you know? The snake it saw something over there, it wanted a mouse or something, it wanted to eat, you know? It was just on its way to the thing. A lot of times we cross paths in an untidy sort of way. Life is a four-way stop. And they tell you in driver's ed, the person on your right gets to go first, but they don't tell you what to do if all four of you get there at the same time. Because then everybody's on everybody else's right. Then what do you have to do? Then you have to think about it. And somebody, the Christ-like one, is going to say, you go ahead. And the person who's deep in their issues is going to say, I'm going first. It's where I have to be is more important. Everybody's going to get to act out their issues in some way, you know? See, it's all a matter of process. Human relationships are about self-confidence and self-esteem and stuff, because that's really all you can manage. That's really the only thing you have power over, is your own side of the process and how you're going to be in the world. So forgiveness can be easier than it's been painted as being in our lives if you replace the thought with another. But here's the thing, replace the thought with its positive opposite, not just some other random thought. See, it's like there are three different speeds. There's negative, neutral, and positive. You might think of it that way. Kind of like, what is it, German has three genders in language. You're lucky if you're a native English speaker, because you've got one. Okay. The Romance languages have two. I'm not sure how many Russian has, but German has three. You know, masculine, feminine, and gender neutral. Well, it's kind of like that. There's three different speeds. I can negatively oppose something, I can positively invite something, or I can just idle. And when I idle, what tends to happen is the last thing that I gave the most emotional power to starts to come back. Jesus talked about this in one or more of the parables where he mentioned the person out of whom devils were drawn. Demons were drawn. What was he talking about? Unhealed psychological issues. That's what's always meant there. Spirits and stuff. That's just how the ancients pictured it. But it's your unhealed, stuck stuff. And when these things were drawn out of the individual, if there was not grace put in its place, they came back and they brought friends. They came back and they multiplied themselves. This is how it is for us. I can't just suspend my critical thinking and go into idle mode and not have it come back with a vengeance. I've got to replace it with something else. What do I replace my resentments with? What do I replace my regrets with? The one thing I know to use is gratitude. Because gratitude is the positive opposite of resentment and regret. See, I don't like how you treated me, to I don't care how you treated me, to I'm grateful for the experience of how you treated me. Is that masochistic? It's interpreted that way sometimes, that if I forgive you, I give you permission to walk all over me again. But not if I take a particular positive stand in my life, that what I am entitled to is good. What I'm entitled to is peace. What I am entitled to is joy. Because then I start to attract into my life those things, whether by means of you or someone else. And if you, Terry Whitaker used the expression, you vibrate out of someone's life. You vibrate people into your life, you vibrate people out of your life. You like a tuning fork. If they're not congruent with you, if they can't get from you what, what they feel they need, they go look somewhere else. Have you ever had anybody try to start an argument with you and you won't play?
Yeah.
Right? What do? They give up. They go find somebody else, go have an argument with. You know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. And they're like, well, that's no fun.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. You do that, and that person goes away to find somebody else to start an argument with. You know what's stuck in their mind? How you were to them. And on some level, they're thinking, I want that. That's really what I want. I want what that person has. I want what that person has. People don't want to pick fights. They really don't, because it makes you feel miserable. It changes your whole metabolism. Your food won't digest properly. You send toxins throughout your body. You age prematurely. People don't want that. They want peace. They think they have to go through trouble to get peace. They think they have to go through combativeness to get peace, because that's just a habit. So what is it time for? A new habit. You build a new habit. You start with the new thought. You practice the new thought. At first it seems alien to you, but you keep at it, and then it becomes comfortable, and then it becomes habitual, and then it becomes your life. And then rare is the time when you wander away from that and you go back into the combative space. Consequently, you're attracting into your life more experiences that are kind of upwardly pointed, rather than the same old tumult over and over again. It's like, what would you like to create? Or as somebody put it, they say you practice this teaching, and it isn't that you don't have problems anymore, it's now that you have much bigger problems. You get to face much bigger problems than just dig a hole and fill it in, and what do you think of me now, and what do you think of me now, and what do you think of me now? You get to go feed the neighbors, for one. You see, if we had all agonized over, well, will they like us? Will they want to be our friend? We probably would have become so intimidated with that, we would have just stayed home. But instead, it's like, let's go out there and put ourselves out there and see what happens, You get to take on the bigger questions of the world, of life. Next month, September, we're going to do a series on Living the Science of Mind, that wonderful book. Danielle's going to help. David Dewhurst is going to help too. And it's essays from the home study course. And I was thinking it's about time for me to think of what I'm going to, I don't want to think of too far in advance what I'm going to do, But I hit on it for October, because October is when I get strange. October is a strange and wonderful time. And it's when we've had series on the Gnostics and the ancient wisdom of Egypt and the kind of this ancient stuff. And somebody who I hadn't thought of in a real long time, who just crossed my field of vision again. I've never done a series on him. He's getting his whole series in October. One of the greatest minds, and one of the greatest examples, though we know very little about his personal life, one of the greatest examples is somebody who must have, on some level, gotten out of his own way, because he did everything imaginable. And he passed away 500 years ago this year. Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci, the discoverer, the inventor, the painter, the writer, all of this. We're going to learn to think like Leonardo da Vinci, learn to feel like Leonardo da Vinci. There's an example. You have your personal examples. People who crossed your path, who I want what that person has, And it's not about like what they do for a living or stuff that you necessarily gravitate toward. It's how they do what they do. What do they know? And I promise you, it's the greatest marketing tool, if you want to take it down to that this teaching has. We could paper the earth with literature about why you ought to be here and all of this. The greatest marketing tool is you. at the water cooler on Monday at your office. You know, you in conflict. This is something else Lisa just put up on that page about it's not, your spirituality is not you on the yoga mat and you at the juice bar and you with all, you know, everything rocking along, okay? It's you in conflict. It's you in trouble. It's you in, right? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? When you're under pressure. When you're under pressure. You're able to successfully deal with it when you remember that there's a touchstone that you can go to that exists as the positive opposite to everything of material struggle, everything that Mary Baker Eddy called the mortal mind, the carnal mind, you know, that tells you of sin, sickness, and death. There's something that exists as the polar opposite to that, and it's eternity, it's infinity, and it's unconditional love. And you go to that place, you build the habit of going to that place. You go to that place, and in that place there's never been any struggle, there's never been any problem at all. Never been any regret. Never been any judgment. Critical judgment, which is what regret and resentment ultimately are. The only difference is that regret is inward, resentment is outward. You did it to me or I did it to me, you know? Either case, they're both fruitless. Because I'm always at the place of new beginning. So you replace the thought with its positive opposite. Jesus talked about this too because he was, as Reverend Arthur calls him, the master mind scientist. He was an expert practitioner of spiritual psychology. He knew spiritual psychology inside and out. He could read people beautifully. And he spoke about turning the other cheek, a widely misunderstood and possibly mistranslated passage, you know. It's come down to us, turn the other. And how most of us have heard it is if somebody smites you, you turn the other cheek. With the implication being that now they can smite the other cheek and you don't care because you're too big of a person to, you know, be bothered by that. But I have a different take on it. It's that when you turn the cheek, you turn the whole head. When you turn the whole head, you turn the attention. You turn the attention off of the insult, off of the slight. You're now looking in a new direction. You're now looking toward the light. And what you think about, you bring about. And what you give your attention to expands. So you look at the slight and then you look away and you look at the truth of you. What is the truth of you? It's not subjective. It's not, everything is subjective but one thing. Okay, the truth of you is objective. It is very clearly this, by which I mean it's not subjective to the use you've made of it. It's not how much money you have, how successful you've been, or whether you followed your dreams or given up on them. All of that is peripheral to this. The one truth of you is that you are whole, complete, and perfect because you are the experience that the only power the universe is having of itself by means of you. And that's what you look toward. And oddly enough, when you do, it's as though other people's behavior changes. Now, whether it does or doesn't is arguable, but you're at least around other people with changed behavior. Whether the first set of people change their behavior and turn into the second set of people, or the first set of people drift off on a raft kind of, and you're around new people. Now, all of that's just logistics. But now you're around people who, it's like heaven. And you share with each other. And you communicate telepathically with each other. And you just know before you know before you know. So yesterday, which you may be tired of hearing about. And that's too bad. No, I honor your presence here and your attention span. But one more story about yesterday. So yesterday, we started out, we got there early, the sun was coming up, stuff. Put on mosquito spray, put sunscreen over the mosquito spray, stood around. A few cars showed up, then it kind of petered out, and we thought, oh, so what did we do wrong? We all started having conversations, we need to do more of this, more of that. And then we hit the lucky sevens or something. Somebody got to somebody's Facebook page and it went viral around the neighborhoods. Plus we had a group of people who were here waving vegetables curbside. We have food. And all of a sudden there were lines of people for food. So we looked at advertising, and we looked at this and this and this, and there was a group of people also treating. They were doing affirmative prayer. Everybody was doing affirmative prayer of some kind, but there was one particular group that was up under the tent at the front that was in prayer, including one of our people who I won't name because I don't want to embarrass them, if they didn't see it coming. But that person emailed me today, this morning. Because we had talked yesterday, and they had said I was treating. They said, well, they took over greeting the people as they pulled up in line, and we had to get data from them at each car window, and all of this is being assembled, tabulated now. But this person, the creative life person I'm referring to, we asked the people at the car window, so how did you hear about this? And our person had someone tell them, I didn't plan to drive down this street today, but we need food. And something said, turn here. And said this individual to our person, I think it was God. I think it was God. Now, there are 100 ways to look at that. Cleverly, judgmentally, to write it off as coincidence, to write it off as superstition. Some of you have Kleenex to your eyes. That's another way of looking at it, kind of blurrily, right? It's a million different things could be true. And there's one thing that's healthy for you to believe, and that is that was communication from heart to heart. That wasn't coincidence. That wasn't just trajectory of, hyperbole and people being over-religious and saying all of this kind of jazz to each other because it sounds like the right thing to say. It wasn't that. That won't get you anywhere. Figuring out how all this stuff works won't get anybody anywhere, because I defy you to try. You go far enough back and it's like, why am I even here? I have no clue. Where did I come from? Where am I going? No idea. All I know is how I feel right now. All I know is what I'm thinking about right now. And that's what's healthy for us to do, is say that, this wasn't just a blessing and then clouds opened and angels came down, beams of light, and presented food to this family and all that. No, it was a simple operation of communication, a request and a fulfillment. Boom, just like that. Just as simple as I come in this morning, I asked Jeffrey, like I ask every Sunday, because we now have a little refrigerator backstage. I said, Jeffrey, would you like some water? You know what he tells me? Yes, unless he tells me no. And then he tells me thank you. And it's as simple as that. No big sleight of hand, no big miracle process, just, you want, here it is. And that's how the system's built to work. That's how it's working in the garden right now with the insects flying around pollinating stuff. That's how it's working right now all through nature. That's how it's working in the turning of the wheel of the year. It's a science. It's a sweet spiritual science. So if I could leave you with one thing for today, it would be this. The next time you're tempted to resent somebody or regret your own behavior, learn from that what you can. I mean, there's some data there to be harvested, but then go to that place where nothing's ever been wrong. Go to that place that just loves you unconditionally and love yourself that much. Meet it halfway. Turn the other cheek and look into the light. See, today's a good day. I'm learning from this, I'm growing, I'm moving forward, I'm creating great things like Leonardo did. And the world will be better for it. So let's know together now, there is this one life, one power, one presence. Pure spirit, everywhere, manifesting, everywhere radiant, joyous, everywhere green, like this summertime is green. That means fertile and lush and abundant. There's an abundance of good available to each one of us as we get ourselves out of the way of the divine serpents. I forgive and I let go everyone and every condition or circumstance that's ever negatively impacted me in any way, real or imagined. And I take control of my thinking, and I offer a blessing to this life and to everyone in it. And if there's anyone whose behavior is difficult, they need to be a better person, they know it at the deepest possible level. And I don't have to kick it back to them to have them know it. I don't have to hold them accountable to my standards. I can let them out of my head. Or if I keep them there, I can wrap them in the light. I choose to gravitate toward the people and conditions and circumstances that are healthy and wholesome and true and good, and also not boring, but funny, entertaining, delightful, occasionally noisy, occasionally messy, but utterly wonderful. For my spirituality is not puritanical. It does not depend on a strict code of behavior, long lists of do's and don'ts. Instead, my spirituality is as big as all outdoors, as big as nature, as big as the sky. That's how much room my Creator has given me to play in an infinite field of possibility. And I use it all. One thought, one dream at a time. For this knowing and its manifestation in form everywhere I turn, I am so deeply grateful. I release this word now into the infinite, calling it